And hey guys, we are back. This is As the Badge Turns podcast. I'm Scott Nocon, joined by Sheriff Rich Stanek, who's with me week after week. And a special guest today, we have Brian Johnson, Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer from the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. And Brian, we'll just kind of get right into the conversation. Again, I'm excited for our new relationship, and we can talk more about that in a few minutes. But certainly excited to see you and everyone in Minnesota next week in Brainerd, Minnesota. Correct, Brainerd. So
beautiful Brainerd.
So I have not been there yet. So this will be a first time, and I can't say a direct flight, but I got a connecting flight through St. Paul. So, hey, I don't have a 2-hour drive from, I guess, St. Paul, right? So it's all looking up. It's all good. So, again,
should have asked us about that before you booked it.
Yeah, well, I probably should have. Yeah. So I'll find out. I'll find out of myself, right? It might be like a prop plane or something. So
it's tiny.
It is tiny.
I wondered why I had option A or B for a seat, and that was it. So we'll find out. And it came with a parachute, but it could all be good. So again, I'm glad you're here. So Brian, for those that don't know you, here's an opportunity just to kind of give us some background on you and certainly about the association. And again, as always, I think most will know this by now. Sheriff Rich is from Minnesota. We're talking to you in Minnesota. So I may just sit back and just let this go. So again, happy that you're here, and let's just get started.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, I actually spent most of my life in Sheriff Rich's County in Hennepin County. Grew up in Brooklyn Park, and I was really fortunate. I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be in law enforcement, probably 10 years. It was kind of that
Nice.
Either be a cop, be a professional wrestler, or a professional football player. The wrestling and the football just didn't work out. But I started out really young. 15, I was involved in the Brooklyn Park Police Explorers and spent a few years there. When I turned 18, I became a Brooklyn Park Police Reserve, and then I started going to college in Alexandria Technical College, and spent 2 years kind of poking around a little bit around the community colleges, and then wrapped it up at Alex, and then started focusing on a 4-year degree. And through that time, again, like I said, volunteering with the sheriff's or the police reserves, and just getting my feet wet and learning more about the job. I started looking for jobs in the late 19s, so it was very competitive job market back then. The average was about a year to get hired, so much different than the market we're in right now. So I started looking right after I graduated, and I got fortunate enough through being a reserve officer in Brooklyn Park. I got hired by a great chief, Mike Haller, who just recently passed away about a year ago in Osseo. Hired me on as a part-time copper, and we just basically were a one-horse town at that time. The neat thing about Osseo was it was in Hennepin County and in Sheriff Stanek's county, but surrounded by all these big cities. It was this tiny little city about 1.5 miles squared, but surrounded by all these big cities, and we were just this one-horse town, and got to learn a lot about law enforcement. Spent about 6 months there, and then I got hired in Wright County and moved out to the country, and I never looked back. I really thought I was going to spend a lot of my career in the metro. But once I got out to Wright County, I really saw the growth and the opportunity with that, and I loved what they were doing. And really, we were so close. We butted up against a lot of the metro areas, so I just had that ability to kind of work in the country, but also be close to metro and work with a lot of our metro law enforcement agencies. So I started in Wright County in 97, and I spent my entire career there. I never looked back, never really was interested in going anywhere else. Worked for 4 different sheriffs, and was just privileged to be able to work for every single one of them. And I retired from Wright County in August. I was a lieutenant in charge of our training and professional standards unit. But throughout my career, I did just about everything you can imagine. I was kind of one of those guys where they would put all their eggs in that one basket. I never said no. So I school resource officer, DARE officer, reserve coordinator, 17 years on our SWAT team, use of force instructor, taser instructor, emergency vehicle operation instructor. I was a detective for 2 years. And then it really, as I progressed and as Wright County grew, the training really just became a big part of it. And that really is where my passion lied, and where I just kept working and pushing on it to the point where it ultimately just became a full-time job for me. So I was fortunate enough. Wright County built a beautiful training center in the early 2000s along with the FBI, and I got a ability to spend my rest of the career basically out there as a training coordinator. And then I got promoted, and it was still under my unit as professional standards and training. And then I was fortunate enough to get a phone call from Sheriff Derringer, who's still the current Wright County Sheriff, and told me that Tom Wells was going to be retiring. He was the past deputy director and asked if I'd be interested. The rest is history. It moved really quick. And then I started with the MSA in September. So I'm still getting my feet underneath me. Conference our summer conference that you guys will be at, and that with our partnership will be my first summer conference as well. So learning a lot just with what we do. I mean, obviously the Minnesota Sheriff's Association supports all of our 87 sheriffs, and we provide training. We do over 8 conferences a year, and the amount of time and effort that takes to do that, again, rookie mistakes for me. I try to make plans with people when I show up at the conference and realize I have absolutely no time for that. But it just, again, learning and developing and growing with the MSA, as well as, with our executive director, James Stewart, who is the past Anoka County Sheriff, his vision along with our Minnesota Sheriff Association's board vision. I know that I was brought in here for a very specific reason, and I'm doing everything I can to help the MSA grow and push forward those visions that they want.
No, that's excellent. So in that regard, just going through, and it's always whenever I get on any of these conversations, I just can't help but just be in awe and impressed with the amount of content or detail that you've gone through. It's like, I did this and I did that, I did this and did that. Some people go, I went to the same office for 20 years and I ate the same ham sandwich. Certainly nowhere near that, right? Nowhere near that. So is there something in your career that stands out as, and I won't hit on a low mark, but the high mark of, this is why I do it. This is why I chose to do this.
Oddly enough, probably the favorite, I have zero regrets from every division I worked in, everything I did. And I always tell people that, and obviously I'm partial to sheriff's offices, but when I'm talking to these young guys and they're talking about a PD, and I know Sheriff Stanek had, a lot of years in a police department too, but his was a large department, so they offered a lot. But I would always talk to these young new officers or trying to be, and I said, hey, you got to look at these sheriff's offices because they offer so many different divisions and opportunities, and you could literally do a completely different job but stay there. And, a lot of the smaller agencies don't always have those abilities. And really my favorite time, and like I said, I loved everything I did, but I was fortunate enough to work in the schools as a school resource officer in the early 2000s. So this was before all of the digital stuff and cell phones and everything. So it was a little simpler in the schools, but I spent 2 years in there and just absolutely loved it. And I would have stayed, but I got promoted and then so I had to step out. But it was really probably the best 2 years that I ever had. Bill, I worked in the middle school, in Monticello Middle School. I got to just build great relationships with the staffs, with the kids. And I enjoyed it. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I really dove into it. We would do all kinds of different activities involving, the sheriff's office and the kids. But that was probably my favorite part of the job over those years.
No, that's great. And in that time, was there a preconceived notion or a perception that you helped reshape as far as, well, what does the sheriff do or what's a police officer do? Were there certain kids that maybe gained a better understanding now of, I'm around you every day or most days, and I get it?
Absolutely. So when I started as an SRO in Wright County, we only had 3 school resource officers. When I retired last year, Wright County Sheriff's Office had the largest school resource officers division in the state of Minnesota. It was not very common out there to see cops in the school. Where I grew up in Brooklyn Park, and I went to Anoka, but we had an SRO in our school in the early 90s, so it was very common for me. So I made a lot of great relationships to the point where I still talk with many of the students, invited to weddings, get emails, get phone calls. And unfortunately, it ages me, but some of them even got hired with the sheriff's office. They're like, "You're my dare teacher." Like, well, that means you were in fifth grade and I was working as a cops.
Yeah.
You started kind of having those aha moments where it's like, I've been doing this for a long time. But that was really neat to see too. And yeah, a lot of, some of the young boys I worked with and girls didn't become cops, but they got into working with at-risk youth, or they got in to probation. And I don't want to say it's just because of me, but definitely a lot of those younger kids gravitated towards the school resource officer in their school when they were looking to get in that field, or if they were thinking about it. So I even got to the point where I was able to get a teacher assistant as a school resource officer. So I'd have the kids come in and help me out with my, not with my job, but things I needed to do in the school, whether they're just printing stuff or what have you. But it was a grand time. I really enjoyed it. And I loved the staff that I worked with. And it was just so unique with that. Way different than just going out on the road, taking calls for service. And I had the best of both worlds, because I spent all school year in the school, and in the summertime, I got to come out on the road and take calls. So towards the end, when you're kind of getting a little burnt out of being in the school, you got to go jump in the squad car and spend the summer taking the calls. And summertime's where it's at. It's busier. There's more stuff going on. And then by the end of summer, you're kind of going, okay, I'm ready to go back to the schools and settle. Yeah.
Ask Brian about the different segments of his career. He just beams from ear to ear.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's a guy who really enjoys his job. I mean, he had a lot of collateral duties. I had 1,000 guys that did those collateral duty that this one guy did over in Wright County. But just think about that. And Brian, I can't help. A couple times you put your hand up a little bit higher so I could see it. You got a couple memorial bands on your wrist, maybe your right wrist. Tell the folks what those mean.
So this one is actually a breach point band, and I'm having a brain fart for the Chief's name, but it's a training that he does, talks about the breach point for law enforcement, and it's really meant to kind of slap our wrists here and remind us of some of the things that we do when we're struggling in law enforcement, or where we're having some trouble, or maybe getting burnt out or going down that wrong path, to kind of help us reset and get back into it.
No, thanks for mentioning. And again, I can't, because it's true. You can see just your overall just smile right there. It just came out, the smile and the enthusiasm. So, this to me, serves as just a continuous reminder of how important these roles are. But in that, let me just, I don't want to go down this path too far, but I think it's worth mentioning is the, myself just being in corporate America for my career, having some associations with police officers and sheriffs and others. Certainly since I met Sheriff Stanek, that's the most interaction I've had over the last couple of years. And I appreciate that. And we've never sat down and really talked stories so much as just being around it, but being at so many conferences, you see these different personalities, you see different states, different counties, it still takes a toll. So, not divulging everything, but, getting through the day and seeing, some great things happen, seeing some tragic things happen. How do you just maintain that balance day in and day out?
I really don't think you do. Not always, it gets really tough. And myself, like probably many in law enforcement, and have had them struggles. And, one of the things that I'll definitely say, I spent my whole career working for a sheriff, an elective sheriff, and then I retired. Now I work for 87 sheriffs. What has been, and I've always known, I've always known the heart and the soul of our sheriffs, no matter where they are. But once I really got into this spot and started having a lot of communication with past sheriffs, current sheriffs, just their heart, how much they care. Sheriff Stanek reached out to me immediately, just anything I needed, anything I could ask him. He's been just a huge resource for me, because I came in and I'm helping and working with all these other sheriffs, and there's things I just don't know. So just to have, and that was so common, and I knew it was there, but it just was amazing to have that. So I think that goes back to to answer part of that question, just having a support system. Mm-hmm. To know that it's just not family, but that I know that I could call any of these sheriffs, current or retired, that I've built relationships with, and they would answer the phone and spend that time to talk, regardless of whatever we're doing. When I was younger and I started struggling, or had times when I struggled, I got into different ways of making myself better. I think it was partially kind of a midlife crisis, but right on my 30th birthday, I decided to start running marathons. I think part of it was just a way to get out there and clear my head. But it was also kind of like dealing with that. I'm turning 30 and what have I done? It was kind of always on my bucket list. And I actually just finished I turned 50 in June of last year, and I ran my last marathon 2 days before my 50th birthday. I made it. I said 20 years is good enough. I went up to Duluth and finished it, and because I was only going to run one marathon, and it was really actually from one of my partners and one of my friends. He's like, "Have you ever thought about just getting out and running? It's great for your mental health. It's great for your physical health. It's a great way to just disconnect from work." And when I started, we didn't really have cell phones. We had pagers, and you had a Discman when you're running, so you didn't have that connection. But it was just a great way for me to kind of focus on that. And then as I grew and as I moved up in the leadership, one of the things that I really started doing too is just being able to help others and just being able to be there as a mentor and a guide and utilize my experiences, my mistakes, my struggles, and to be able to just share that has been very therapeutic as well. I've always told everybody I've done a lot of training around the state, and I just wear my heart on my sleeve, and I don't go in there and mince words, and I don't go in there and pretend that I'm somebody I'm not. And I think it's very helpful just to talk about the things that have happened in my career and in my life and where I struggled and where I've succeeded. And I don't know any cops or anybody in law enforcement that hasn't had challenges or dealt with stuff. It's just a matter of how you handle it and what you do. And I think in law enforcement in general, but especially in Minnesota, we've gotten really good at recognizing that and providing more assistance for our law enforcement officers, in the last 10 or 15 years, as opposed to when I'm sure like Sheriff Stanek and I started, it was kind of more rub dirt on it, don't talk about it, and go to work the next day type thing.
Yeah, Brian, last year we had 5 police officers killed in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
I was out at the law enforcement memorial vigil here a couple weeks ago in DC. And listened as Sheriff Steele and others read the names of fallen officers and their families. That's after a 25, 30-year career, that's got to have an impact on you, right? Your job now is to be the caretaker of the 87 sheriffs, keep them all on the same page, which is really hard. It's like a bunch of 87 different cats going in different directions. They come in all shapes and sizes. What do you think?
I can tell you that was a big part of my pros and cons when I was looking at moving from Wright County to the MSA. First, my thought was, am I able to be able to provide that amount of service to all these sheriffs? Do I have that experience? I clearly recognized that coming in my position was in the leadership role lower than a sheriff, chief deputy, captain. So I knew that, my experience was definitely less than some. I was fortunate to be at such a large agency that I probably was privy to a lot of stuff that was going on a regular basis because we were so large and we had such a great staff. So I may not have been the person making those decisions, but I was at the table or around, and I was able to learn from all of them. But the MSA, one of the many things we try to do is to be that support for the sheriffs, because the sheriffs, and like you said, Sheriff Stanek, the sheriffs spend so much time focusing on their own team, everybody else, and then it's who's taking care of them, who's reaching out to the sheriffs and asking them if they're okay, who's providing them that support. And that's one of the things that we are doing at the MSA, and we're looking at utilizing technology and different types of resources to provide those to the sheriffs, and what works and what doesn't work. And some of the newer ideas that we've tried have been working, others they didn't really take off, and so we just look at different areas. But the amount of stress that is put on a sheriff on a daily basis is so enormous. And one of the many things I learned too in this career is that it's really hard to do this for a long time if you care. It's really hard. There's certain people that I don't want to say they don't care, but they just don't. If you really care about the people that you serve, if you really care about the people that you lead, it eats at you, even when it's not a bad thing. You have a deputy that leaves to go to another agency and you're going, why did they leave? And it's you take it personally, and it eats at you. Or if you have somebody who's struggling in your office, you worry about them at night, you pray for them at night, you think about that type of stuff, and it can wear on you. It can make it really, really tough. And a lot of that stuff, you might not realize how much it affects you until many years down the road.
Yeah. So in that, I know, and we talked about this a little bit. I'm just kind of gathering my thoughts because there's just a lot of really good information coming in here. And again, channeling what you're saying and having, so in some past episodes, and I even mentioned this to Sheriff Stanek as well, how do you, or where does that work-life balance come in? How do you, because I guess in some instances you have to make it happen, but that's not always there's not always the luxury of doing that. So, during your career, and maybe that's even transferred over now into this role, certainly different dynamics in play, but what has been your experience and how have you been able to work through that?
It took me a while to get my priorities straight. I absolutely can say right now my priorities are God, family, and the MSA. When I was in Wright County, it was God, family, and Wright County Sheriff's Office. The current sheriff that I worked for, Sheriff Derringer for Wright County, he would always speak to our new deputies, and he would talk about making donations into your personal bank and making donations into your professional bank, and that sometimes we would have to withdraw from that personal to do our job. He said it much more eloquently than me, but that was that part where you had to realize that, hey, there's going to be times with this job where I'm going to have to miss stuff. I'm going to have to not go places. I'm going to have to miss birthdays or what have you, because what the need is more important. But ultimately, I was trying to find that balance, and I think it takes a while to try to figure that out. Once you do, then it's taking advantage of that time when you can rehab, where you can spend more time with your family, and just stepping back and enjoying that. And that's hard to do too. I mean, if you love the job, it doesn't seem like you're working. I know there's a lot of old cliches with that type of stuff, but I find myself still to this day getting excited to go into work and do different things. Truly became a cop. One of the other main reasons too is I was not a great student in school, and I did not like sitting behind a desk in class at school. And I was like, I wanted to be doing a job where you were not behind a desk. And ironically enough, the higher you move up in law enforcement, the more you sit behind a desk, the more meetings you go to. Yeah. And the less police work you do, the value is still extraordinary. But that was always that challenge too, where there was a lot of therapeutic resources when you were just out in that car and able to see those immediate changes and being able to help. And then as you moved up into administrative positions, it was more of that decisions that sometimes they didn't show for a long time, or it was down the road, and that was always tough.
Absolutely.
So we got this. Yeah. I'm sorry. We got this big conference coming up, right? Minnesota Sheriff's Conference. Every state has one or two, or a couple of them a year. I used to serve as president of MSA back in, I think, 2016, and I loved every minute of it. But here we're going to be up in Brainerd. Scott, you and Prime Health are going to be up there as well. Hope you bring in a lot of bug spray. The mayflies have
warm. It's going to be warm next week, Scott.
And the mayflies have hatched. It's going to be, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. Our Minnesota bird, the mosquito. And,
excellent.
What's Scott going to expect when he comes to northern Minnesota to be with 87 sheriffs from all over the great state? I know he's been to Wisconsin, Michigan. He's been down to Florida, Texas. He's been all kinds of places. What's different about Minnesota?
I don't think there's any place better than Minnesota in the summer. I can't tell you how many times I'd talk to my wife or say this when we would go to a wedding in June or something, and we'd talk to the bride and grooms, like, what are you guys doing for your honeymoon? Oh, we're going here. I go, why would you leave Minnesota in the summertime? I mean, there are so many different places, but when you start talking about that Brainerd Lakes area, and all the areas up there, but specifically Brainerd, where you got all these amazing resorts they're historic resorts. They got that just wonderful old resort feel with all the great amenities though, and all the updates. I mean, you can't go anywhere without seeing and looking out at the lake. It's one of my favorite places to be. It's got some of the greatest golf in the country, just great staff, great food, and if it doesn't matter what you want or like to do, there's something for everybody up there. On the water, on the golf courses, the bike trails, hiking, shopping, first class food, all within just short minutes of time. A lot of the resorts where we're staying, like Cragen's, they're connected. There's Madden's right next to it, and you have all these great stories of these entrepreneurs that started these resorts as friends, and they've just grown, and their families are taking it over. But you're also going to expect to see almost all of our 87 sheriffs. Right now, we got 74 out of the 87 that are attending. I mean, that's a great number, right? We got a few sheriffs that got some pretty hectic things going on in their county, and they may not be able to make it. St. Louis is dealing with a lot of wildfires up in Duluth. It sounds like they got them contained, but we got a few that just can't make those. But to have that number, that high percentage of those sheriffs and the chief deputies, along with wonderful vendors, exhibitors such as you guys that'll be up there, it's just a great time to network, a great time to communicate, and we have fun too. We have golf tournaments. We do a lot of different stuff. So we try to make it enjoyable, but also provide that education. You know, our sheriffs, they got a lot going on. Our chief deputies got a lot going on. So when we have them up there, we definitely try to give them that quality of education that they need, hit those hot topics, but also give them a little bit of time. A lot of sheriffs will bring their family up there, and they'll do some relaxing and enjoying it. And it's just a great place. I can't think of a better place that I'd rather be in summertime.
I'm sold. Yeah. You know, I'll look out for you said the state bird is the mosquito, right? So I'll be mindful of that.
Woods off, deep woods off is the best.
I'll make sure I pick some of that up. And yeah, this will be my first time in the state of Minnesota, other than just passing through the airport, which that does not count. That does not count. So if I'm putting pin marks on a map, if I flew over a state, that doesn't count. If I did a layover, that doesn't count. I actually have to have a meal or spend a night there. I guess that's my criteria. So yeah, Brian, it's great to hear all that stuff. And certainly in being in a number of different states, different counties, having these conferences, some of the things you hit on. Obviously, there's going to be different activities. It matters who coordinates the events. I'm not going to out anybody with my favorite or my worst experience. I'm not saying any of that. I'm sure this is going to be a great experience. But again, there's definitely a deep admiration for the time and effort that goes into it. Because like you said, it turns into a vacation destination, which why not? Utilize the time, utilize the venue. And then there's a lot of learning going on. And then there's just the brotherhood, sisterhood of coming together. And then, yes, certainly, from a partner vendor perspective, we want to be in a place that we can tell the story, right? We can talk about Prime. We can talk about Prime Corrections and the value that we can bring. So, I'm excited for us from a relationship standpoint to kick it off. I guess the timing couldn't have been even better. We enter into an agreement, and I go, by the way, there's a conference, and I appreciate you saying, well, it might be too soon. I'm like, no, not at all. I go, we will be there. I already had it on my calendar. So in all that, the opportunity for myself and Prime as a whole is just to be able to show you and others the opportunity that we can bring. We want to be of service. We want to specifically by name and by what we do, the offsite inmate medical bills. We want to be able to provide a solution. We know that many counties, if not most counties, already use in-house medical. That's fine. We live independent of that. We focus solely on the offsite bill. And if anything, if there's one bill a year, it could be a couple $100,000. We've talked about that on past episodes. Have us as the backstop. Have us as a solution, and let us show you and others we want to be that as an option to you. So that's where I'm looking forward to meeting every single sheriff that's there. We're going to have in our booth, I'll even have a little mobile setup. So if someone wants to sit down and just talk for a few minutes, I'll have that ready to go. Also, we'll have a video screen so we can show some of our previous savings opportunities, show our software. And it's all a matter of, again, being of service, making it available. Again, we want to be a solution. Hopefully we're the answer. If anything, we can always be a good option, a good alternative. So looking forward to it is for sure.
And we had a great conversation. I really will call that a conversation. When we were introduced, you and I just had that chance to talk. And I recall after, getting done towards the end, I'm going, why isn't everybody doing this? I mean, after you explained what you're doing, my world was not a lot into the jail administration part, but still it all kind of came together. But I definitely did my due diligence for the MSA after we spoke too, and did check out what you guys were doing and who you were working with, different sheriff associations, different sheriff's offices, the amount that you guys that Prime was able to save them, and how they were able to do that. And that to me was such a big thing as well, where, we know that some of our agencies, they don't have that ability. And also if they're able to even take, I think one of them was over $1 million last year that you guys were able to save. I mean, even if they could take 1/10 of that, that's huge for those budgets. And we know right now too, from talking with a lot of sheriffs and just having friends, I'm sure, and family that are still involved in working with counties, that there's probably going to be some tightening budgets coming up here in the near future. So anything that our sheriffs can do, our jails can do to save some money is huge. To piggyback off of that, it was ironic, but of just a few weeks after you and I had talked, and then after we were building this relationship and working on it, I had just gone to the doctor and had a physical. And oddly enough, my bill came back and I had a $350 charge to it.
Yeah.
And when I called, they had said, well, now we changed how we do our billing, and you can only talk about this, this, and this, but you talked about this, so that's a separate office visit, so we're charging you. And I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
if they're doing that to me as a
Yeah.
physical, what are they doing to everybody? How is that changing for everybody else?
Yeah.
Then my wife had gone a few months later, and they actually gave her a piece of paper saying everything that they didn't tell me, and going, hey, when you come to physical now, you can only ask about these things, and if you ask any more, then we're going to charge you for it. It's going, there's got to be somebody that knows it better and that can navigate around that and help our sheriffs, help our jail administrators, and help with that billing. And just like I said, working with you, talking with you, talking with other agencies that have worked with you guys, it was really a simple decision after all of that.
No, that's great. And I appreciate that. And, I can sit here and talk, and I can. I've been accused of talking too much, but that's why I guess we do a podcast, so we can talk about it and record it and listen to it over and over again. But really in the context of this service that we provide, this opportunity, I want others to tell the story, right? Yes, we can show in our results, but I appreciate you taking that time and that effort. And again, because you're putting your name on it and saying, I want to stand behind this, but I'm not going to do so at the risk. I enjoy my career I have now, so I want to make good decisions that can be backed by good partners that can extend out savings and keep the dollars in the county, which is what we're about. Having it at the association level, to me, is so important, because we can then partner together. We can jointly see the benefit. We can help communicate out, again, where the timing works, and it does, with next week being the conference in Minnesota. The message is fresh. The message is out there. But doing your due diligence, I admire that. I appreciate that. Having others tell you about their own experience, word of mouth. That's probably the best indicator. That's the best supporter. That's the best cosign there can be. How did it work for you?
Exactly. I mean, that's I think with everything. I mean, I remember, even again, this is how we had it at our sheriff's office. We had a board in the squad room of who do you know that does good electric, who's a good plumber, and especially cops never wanting, strangers in their house. So it's like, who's good, and we want to take it from somebody who's already in that field. So when I'm able to call some of these sheriff's associations and these other sheriff's offices in other states who I know you guys have worked with, and just get exceptional reviews, to me that's enough. I don't need to spend months and months and months researching the history of your company. When we're getting that firsthand from people in the law enforcement field, that's huge. Same, and that's all that works in law enforcement. When we do backgrounds for law enforcement back in the day, if you could get somebody who was in law enforcement or in the field to help give you a resume or be part of that background, those were some of the more valuable comments that you got, because they knew what the job entailed. They were able to give you that information, and they were open and honest. I mean, that's part of the integrity in the law enforcement field too. They're not going to lie to you or try to blow smoke in front of you just to for whatever reason it may be. They're just always going to be honest.
Absolutely. It's a voice of authority. So you can buy into it, you can believe it, and again, the results speak for themselves. So no, I appreciate.
Well, I see a new business opportunity with Brian's List.
Yeah,
Brian's List, right? Him and his colleagues.
I like that. Just list them
they
all.
validate
out.
and verify. Yeah, who's the best plumber? Who's an electrician I can trust? Who's the guy you call when your toilet's back?
Absolutely.
We had it. It just was. I bet it's still there at the sheriff's office too. But that was a big deal.
20% off the top.
There we go.
But with that being said too, and I know you brought up all the things that we do at that conference. I mean, the MSA is a small group. We're about 8 full-time now. We're growing a little bit, but this small team does tremendous work and puts on a big conference, and it is a lot of work and a lot of stress leading up to it, and a lot of reward afterwards as well too. Like I said, after every conference, I got a little blue book. I write tons of notes and take different notes, and also look for ideas from Sheriff Stanek, attendees, and our vendors. And we've done a lot with that too, just a change to try to be more accommodating, but also provide a better product with our conference. Even when we have great conferences, it's just like a championship sports team. You still watch film the next day, and you still talk about it and what worked for us, what didn't work, and how are we going to do it better. And that's just always our goal, to keep elevating and having more partners, not better partners. I think all of our partners are phenomenal, but adding partners that can help elevate the resources and what we can offer to our sheriffs in Minnesota is a big part of what we do. And I think our sheriffs recognize that and know that when it's coming from us that they don't have to do the legwork to check that out, because they know that the MSA has put their stamp on it, put their approval on it, so they don't have to do that. They know that we took the time, or they trust that we took the time and know that we took the time to do that.
No, absolutely. Again, looking forward to next week, meeting as many of your staff. I agree, being at other conferences, not all of the associations do have a big staff. If any, sometimes just a couple people, but they have many hats, and it's a constant dance, and you got to keep moving, and there's a lot to do. So I'm always very appreciative of that, knowing that dedication and support extends throughout that association. So for this, Brian, we could probably sit here for a couple hours, but I think the reality is that I just wanted to take the opportunity now and speak with you. This will be posted before the conference, and it will portions of this we'll have on a loop at our booth. So feel free to stop by. You might have to sign some autographs after this gets pushed out, but again, I do appreciate the time for sure. It was great to kind of dive into your past, and I really appreciate just your candor and your openness. And I can see I can see it, and I can feel it. Just the enthusiasm. Just this is something in any job that you've done. I can tell that you love it, and having your heart in something matters. It is infectious. It makes me feel good about what I do, that I can be around great people. So thank you for taking the time. I look forward to seeing you next week. Sheriff Stanek, as always, I appreciate you making the time. I know you're always on the road. So, that with the power of technology, you're able to connect wherever. This is just one more episode of As the Badge Turns. We're going to continue to be out there, and we're recruiting additional voices and faces to be heard. So, Brian, I'm glad you're part of it, and I look forward to next week. And until next time, thanks everyone for joining us.
All right.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Scott.
Bye, Brian.
See you
See you next week.
Yeah, see you in a few days. Have a great day.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Scott with Prime Health Services and Prime Corrections. And when I'm not hosting with Sheriff Stanek, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about our offsite inmate medical cost containment solution. So if you're running a jail and you have to take an inmate offsite for medical treatment of any type, have you ever paid full bill charges for that expense? Hopefully not. But if you have, let Prime help you out. So what we do every day, we receive many bills. I'll give you one example of a bill we just processed this week. This was for a county in Florida. This was for an air ambulance treatment. The total bill, $53,256. Through our scrubbing process and negotiations, we were able to reduce that bill down to $8,447.26. That's a savings of 84%. So if you are looking to save on your offsite inmate medical expense, contact Prime. You can reach us via a link below. You can also send an email directly to corrections@primehealthservices.com. That's corrections@primehealthservices.com. Let Prime show you, and let Prime help you save money. Thanks, and have a great day.